hello everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of ClueCon Weekly. Joining us this week is someone who many people will recognize, but you instantly know who he is after I introduce him. Jean-Baptiste Kempf is the VideoLAN president and founder of amongst others, of the VLC project. So everybody uses VLC everywhere. So thank you for joining us, Jean-Baptiste.
Thanks for having me.
So could you start with a quick introduction about yourself, please?
Yeah, so my name is Jean-Baptiste. I am the president of the VideoLAN non-profit organization, which is doing several software around multimedia, one of them being VLC. A few others are mostly decoding and encoding libraries like X264 or David or other stuff related to multimedia. And I've been doing open source work since 18 years now, and I'm active on several other multimedia projects, including FFmpeg. And a few others.
Nice. Well, and where, with the project in history and so widely used, etc. So how did it get started? Like, where was it born because you didn't find a video player you liked?
So the thing is, like, VLC is a project which is a continuation of a project, which is a continuation of a project. So the thing is, like, there is no creator of VLC because it was like a student project over the years that became VLC. But the story is quite fun. It starts on the campus of the École Centrale Paris, that is a university south of France, south of Paris in France. And basically, for some weird reason, historical reasons, all the networking was managed by the students. And we are in 1994, 1996, and they had like a 10 megabit token ring network, right? Which was, for those people who still know what is token ring, a very slow networking protocol, because instead of having switches, like everything was chained. And so when you wanted to talk, you put like a small talking, and then you go from computer to computer. That was quite slow. And they wanted something faster. And we are in 1994, and they go to see the university, and the university says, well, I'm not going to give you money for that because, like, you don't need more to go and work. And of course, one of the goals was to be able to start playing video games and online video games. And they say, well, you should talk to business industry partners from the university. And they go there, and one of them say, well, you know what? I want absolutely to distribute video over LAN, right? So obviously today, like, of course, but we're in 1996, right? It's now close to 30 years ago. And well, you had a 486 DX at 33 megahertz, and being able to decode video there was not science fiction, but tricky, right? Even with a new Pentium. But they say, well, you know what? We're still going to try to do something. And they actually did. And the project could have stopped there, right? They had their new network, which was ATM, 100 megabits on every university room, was great. And they had the demo, right? The demo worked for 45 seconds, taking a satellite dish. Of course, 50 seconds it was after it was crashing, but that was okay for the demo. And well, they could have stopped there, but like almost 1 year later, in mid 1998, one guy says, you know what, like, this could be useful for other people who want to stream video over a network, a local network. And they started this project, which was called VideoLAN. And there was a client, there was a server, there was a lot of active things on the network. It was very specific. But the goal was to become open source. And it became open source in 2001. And the goal was to have like something that was multiple OS, so OS2 at the time, and BOS and Linux, right? They put that open source. Some people add support for DVDs, and some people start adding support for new codecs, and someone puts it on Windows, and someone puts it on Mac. And that's how the client, which was just a small part of the solution, became bigger and bigger. And this VideoLAN client is basically what became VLC afterwards. So it stayed as a student project for 4 or 5 years, and then I took it out of the university and created a non-profit standalone for VLC as a project in 2007. And then VLC became bigger and bigger to be one of the top software used.
Well, yeah, and So, how many people did you work with? I mean, a 30-year project. It's almost a generational. It's almost a
Yeah,
generational project.
so if you look really at the starting of the source code of VLC, it's 1999, so we are closer to 25 years than 30, but still. Over the years, maybe 1,000, 1,200 people contributed. Every year, there is around 100 people who contribute. The core team is absolutely very, very small. We are talking for a long time, we are like 4 or 5 maintaining software. Maybe today it's grown a bit. We're maybe 8 to 10, but like still, compared to a software that has hundreds of millions of users, this is extremely small.
Yeah. And how? So is it all volunteer based? How do you maintain? Well, who pays for the work if there's anything to pay for? Like, what's the? Is it the foundation? Do you have donations? Do you have a company backing the project? How is it maintained long term?
So for most of the story, the history of VLC, everything was done by students. Students working on their free time, and then young professionals working on their free times at night. And that's probably the largest amount of people. The nonprofit gets donations, but they're not enough to pay one engineer. So that's like very far from being useful. It's useful to buy hardware, servers, travel to open source conferences, and so on, but still not making people paid like that. I created a company and then 2 companies doing basically consulting around VLC and multimedia in general. And that allows to get some people working full-time on VLC. But that's quite new.
Well,
5 years.
Well, yeah, I think, I mean, it's such a storied project that everybody uses VLC for anything. Like, it's been, I don't even know if there's any other video player to use like that. How much I use VLC? I don't know if there's others. Like, literally don't know. And well, do you think that has made an impact on the market? Like, for a long time, if you remember, well, you do remember because you were in the space, but there were other players like real player. There was a lot of video players in the space that will just compete. And as they sort of went away one by one, do you think is it a case where open source effectively won? Like one of the few cases where open source won the market?
Yeah. So the thing is, yeah, one by one, real player, BS player. There is some of them still exist, but they are completely niche. The thing is, today, VLC and some of the technology of VLC, which became into FFmpeg, is used everywhere, right? As soon as you see video online, there is either code from VLC or FFmpeg or VideoLAN nonstop, right? Everything you're watching from YouTube, Netflix, and so on is using some part of VLC or VideoLAN or FFmpeg technologies, right? So even if you're not using VLC, you might use it without knowing it, right? Also, the engine is a different license and is embedded in a lot of mobile apps, phones, apps, and it's being used there, right? So directly or indirectly, you're using VLC quite a bit. And yeah, it's unusual to have that today. Of course, there is a lot of JavaScript players which are not players, right? They're just wrapping around the video tag of the navigator of the browser and adding a lot of JavaScript around it. So, but no, I don't think there is anything competing with VLC today.
Yeah, I'm wondering. So you mentioned FFmpeg. Not everybody knows, and I'm not even sure myself, but what's the relationship with the FFmpeg and probably libav projects at this point? Because they're all one within the other.
So the thing is, FFmpeg has had a difficult history and is basically a collection of mostly decoders and encoders and format demuxers and a few video and audio filters. But over the years, a lot of the people from MPlayer and VLC moved to that and moved more code there. And it's now being used for literally everything online. Every encoding, every transcoding job is using FFmpeg in a way or another. It's a community that is quite close to the VideoLAN community. We do a lot of conferences in common, actually paying some people also. VideoLAN pays some people through bounties that are doing stuff on FFmpeg because what improves FFmpeg also improves VLC. So, but like FFmpeg, for example, doesn't have a non-profit, a formal non-profit like VideoLAN has. So we're quite close, but they are more, they're less organized than VideoLAN, for example.
Yeah, but were they, so was FFmpeg born out of VideoLAN or are those separate projects?
No. The project was started by Fabrice Bellard, and it was really like at that time mostly MPEG-2 and DivX decoder. And at that time, for example, VideoLAN was the first one to have an MPEG-2 open source decoder, which was called libmpeg2, and a MPEG-2 audio decoder, which was called libmad, and that was part of VideoLAN. So, but over the year, especially at the time of DivX and XVid, a lot of things were added to FFmpeg, and so we added that. We added that in VLC based on FFmpeg, and FFmpeg grew and grew. There was a big fork 10 years ago that I tried to fix. I think I managed it. So now the community is back together, but that took quite a bit of time to do.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, those are all. So first of all, I want to point out that the video open source world seems to speak French. Like everybody, all the projects.
No. So it's not true, but it's multimedia open source is a European topic.
Yes, yeah,
like,
pretty much.
It's a European topic, right? And it's for a lot of reasons. I think it's mostly related to multimedia patents, which are completely insane. But yeah, multimedia open source is a lot of people from France, quite a few from Germany and Eastern Europe. Also because it's a very mathematical topic, and there is like very strong mathematical background for a lot of engineers here.
Some friends from Italy, like Lorenzo from the Janus project. The others from the Janus project.
Yeah.
You're right. It's very European. And that's why I think when you go at Potsdam, for example, there's a lot of very interesting media talks going on because everybody is from the side of the Atlantic. I think the Frisbich might be the odd one out because all of the others come from Europe. Camellia included, OpenSIPs included. Like if you go down the stack to telephony, etc., it's all European stuff. So it's very. You're right. It's very interesting. Well, good. Well, it's good we have something that we do well. It's great to hear. So, what's the? I usually ask two questions. One, what's the code base written in, and what tools do you use around the code base to make sure things are managed properly? Like, do you run tests? Use continuous integration? What's the release handling look like? That kind of stuff.
So one of the reasons why VLC managed to stay sane is that VLC is a small core, well, smallish, 80 to 100,000 lines of code, and then a lot of modules, right? So like a normal installation of VLC is around 405 or 500 modules, right? Each module doing one feature, one codec, one support, one filter, and with a very simple C API between the modules. So that helps to have something that is sane, and you can add a feature without modifying everything, which manage to not have too many forks and keep like a constant code and a constant project. So that's one of the good things, and that's because of the way it was developed. Most of it is C, no C++, because C is a simple language with a lot of issues, but at least it's simple, then everyone can agree on the C, while C++ is more difficult. And every other language is, of course, with a JIT and therefore not suitable for anything multimedia. We have a bit of C++ for the UI, a bit of Objective-C to integrate on macOS. For the Android version, some Java and Kotlin to do the GNI in the UI, but most of it is in C. And all the VLC code base is around 1 million lines of code, and then tons of libraries, right? FFmpeg being one, but if you see all the dependency of VLC, you have 100 dependencies, and the total is around 15, 18 million lines of code. So we have a very strong CI and a lot of tests. Our CI is basically 19 or 20 platforms because we support Windows Linux, Mac, but also Android, Android TV, Chromebook, iOS, Apple TV, iPod OS, and of course several embedded Linux distribution, Raspberry Pi, and so on. Right? So VLC is a very, very large number of platforms, larger than many other software. More than Chrome, more than LibreOffice, I think.
It feels like the maintaining the different versions is a good portion of the actual work, like making sure
Yes,
everything still works on 20 platforms, of which many are honestly quite exotic, because even amongst the many developers and people I know,
yeah,
many
that is
people
a
Android TV app, right?
yeah, and it's even more complex is that it's very difficult to test audio and video playback, right? Because, well, it's sometimes difficult to know what is actually displayed on the screen, right? Because, well, even if you send something, it says, okay, well, maybe it's not, right? Because there is something that is not working inside the video driver. So this makes it even more difficult to test.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, testing a web application is easy because you're calling an API, and your test is when I call this API sending the number 1, I should get back the number 4. Done. That's easy to test. But how do you test something that's supposed to play video? So I'm curious, how do you check that? How does it work?
So on FFmpeg, there was this project about automating testing of FFmpeg, which took a long time, which was called Fate. And it's basically doing, I'm going to say, MD5 of the frames. It's not really that, but that's the idea, right? And that's at least how you can test the software decoders. As for hardware decoders, well, there is a lot of manual testing, and what you can do is basically take a movie and check what is going on, but that is very tricky to automatize, right? So we still have a lot of manual testing that's very tricky.
That's interesting. Yeah, one thing we figured out at one point when testing WebRTC, it was built by our one of the core engineers for FreeSwitch, Brian West. We were playing audio and sending a changing QR code as the video. So you could take a screenshot, and so recording the audio is cheap, and you can we'll take a screenshot, transcribe the audio at the same moment in the video, and check. So the QR code was number 14, so there was this synthesized voice should have been saying 14 in the test. It sounds silly, but especially the video part worked remarkably well. So the QR code plus screenshots is really good. And I think actually a FFmpeg is used to generate the QR codes, or there is something close to that. It's very interesting. So that worked for us too. It is, but yeah, the easiest way is probably to.
But for movies, you need to have a better video synchronization, right? So you need to be at the 20 milliseconds, and then the QR code and the text is not possible because that's too slow compared to 20 milliseconds.
You're right. So it's effectively you're playing uncompressed video, and then you're trying to check the checksum of the frame somehow. That's in short. Then of course it's probably more complicated than that. That's smart. I think that's something you never think about. Again, testing a database is easy. I try to store the number 100, then I go check that key, and it has to have the number 100. Testing is easy.
Well, yeah, until you get distributed databases on multiple data centers, and then it's become more complex. But yes, for us, like even basic testing is difficult.
Yeah, because I mean, you're right. It can become complicated, but at the end, you're always checking machine readable values. Like is the value I gave you great, so it saved correctly. Well, of course, the video is not easy. I mean, that's and that if you know, I'm just curious, how long does your full test suite take to run?
4 hours.
Oh wow! Well, not even too bad. I mean, I was expecting it to be longer.
Yes, but you need to have someone in front of it.
Oh, you need to watch it, so it's not fully automated because of how complicated it is, I assume.
Very difficult. So before I release, I have a 4-hour playlist that I'm going to watch.
Oh, well, nice. And well, I'm curious, testing for things like Apple TV. Do you have an actual Apple TV connected to something? Because that hardware is really close and doesn't really.
Very painful, but yes, and that's one of the issues with the VideoLAN project is that we need to buy a lot of hardware, whether they are TVs, like which are now Android TVs, which are actual TVs, Apple TVs, a lot of CI, etc. Right? So we spend a lot of money on hardware. Yes.
And it changes often, so you need to buy something new. Essentially, I don't say probably every day if you really wanted to do it. Like every day is something new.
Yeah, like for a long time, people like Android developers were complaining about fragmentation, and what they meant was like the different releases of the OS and the size of the screen. I was just like, what are you talking about? We care about the different version of the system on chip, right? Because even the same resolution, even the same phone, it could be so many different things because technically we're doing hardware decoder and we need to integrate that, right? So yeah, it's an order of magnitude more complex for us.
That's nice. I mean, it must be a lot of work. Even just even just maintaining the operating systems, not counting the specific devices. So, what's coming up next? Is there anything exciting on the horizon? What you see in the next big thing in video is going to be?
There is a lot of things that changing, mostly in the backends, right? A lot of things that were done on CPUs cannot be done on CPUs anymore and must be done on GPUs, because whether it's like 4K, HDR, 8Ks, or new filters and so on. So there is a lot of work that is being done around Vulkan about cross-compiling of shaders and so on. And it's difficult because that's a lot of technical depth that we have, mostly about CPU-based filters and so on. So that's one of the things that's happening. And also like codecs like AV1 are actually now usable, right? They're on paper there since 4 years, but it's just now that they are. So there is a lot of new codec support that is coming for VLC, and also you need to be on more phones and more versions of the phones and so on, right? So there is a lot of ongoing work. There is quite a bit of work on the UI to make it a bit easier. People complain about that quite a bit. So that are the things that we're doing. And of course, there's going to be a new VR wave because of Apple. So we're going to see.
I was about to ask.
VR was there 8 years ago. It went flop, and maybe we have a new wave. I don't know. We'll see. But we need to have.
You got to spend $4,000 actually to buy one of those visors just to test it.
Yeah, probably going to go and steal one because that's cheaper.
Yeah, or maybe go test in an Apple store. Like, hey, just
yeah,
a minute.
But for development, it's a bit too complex to do that.
Yeah, it shouldn't be. You're right. So yeah, VR. I think VR is a good portion of users because as far as I know, VLC is one of the best players for VR. Do you see the adoption for VR going up, or do you think it's not? It's going to end up the same way as 3D television?
No idea.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a crystal ball. There was lots of things on 3D and VR 10 years ago. It's now all gone, but Apple is coming back, and Apple is like big thing. So a lot of people are probably going to try it again. I don't know. The thing is, because we have on a lot of platforms, we cannot say, well, we need to be aware about what's going on, right? Because if something happens, we need to be able to catch up quickly.
Yeah, for sure. It's still, yeah. I'm always wary of technology that failed once, like the metaverse thing. It just fizzled out. Let's see if this thing where the Apple visor, price aside, has the transparent front that sort of makes it augmented reality. I'm going to depend. Honestly, I'm curious to see where that goes. I'm not getting one yet because it's too expensive. I'd rather buy a new computer than
VR. But VR did not fail once. It failed, I think, 2 or 3 times already, right? So who knows?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Well then, and how often do you release? What's the do you have a specific cadence, or how do you manage releases when it's ready?
When it's ready, yes. It also mostly depends on how stable is the current version, right? Like, if you have a very stable version, then you can spend more times because people don't complain too much. If you don't, then it's more tricky, right? So we're very reactive compared to, we listen a lot to our users and code base. And so it mostly depends on that. And sometimes we need to do difficult changes, like the one we are doing on VLC4. And so that's something that, well, we don't have any choice, right? When when you need to tackle some technical depths, it's painful, but that's how it is.
What changes are coming up?
As I said, a lot of things on backend, right? So we changed the core clock, the core playlist, the core input management in order to prepare things like gapless, like crossfading, like a lot of video filters, a lot of GPU filters, etc., right? Quality, HDR, and so on. Those are things that are like long-term things and are painful if you want to do them well. And so that's what we're doing right now.
Yeah, GPU work seems to be taking off a lot. Like I said, there's AI using GPUs. There's video using GPUs. The question is, GPUs are expensive. If they become necessary to truly use systems in general, that's going to be a problem, in my opinion. It's going to be expensive for a lot of people.
Will it be so expensive? I don't think so. You don't need the latest NVIDIA GPU, which can run the large video game, right? So, I mean, Intel is trying with Arc to do quite decent GPUs with a fraction of the price. So I think that's what we're going to see. But yeah, I agree. GPU are going to be like mandatory in the future.
Yeah, it really depends on what they're going to be mandatory, but you're right. In fact, I think that's interesting. There used to be a time, like my second last Mac had a GPU. Now I have a 16-inch first generation that's almost 4 years old at this point, and this doesn't have a true GPU. So they're probably just going to start getting back into laptops and all the others. It's interesting how for a while we didn't need one, right? It is coming back. Although if you want high-end stuff, it's really expensive. I was looking yesterday. It's easy to drop $4,000 on GPU.
Yeah, especially one of the issues is that it's not more about the GPU, but the GPU RAM, right? Because some of the model and AI model need a lot of RAM for inference. So that's starting to be also a problem, is that you're going to need a lot more RAM for your GPU than for your CPU, which is a bit ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. Plus battery and a lot of things. So it's well, I mean, we've done this before. Many laptops have GPUs, so that work out. Good. So, well, last question: how many users do you think VideoLAN has at large? Like, how many people are using?
VLC probably 500. Probably 500 million for VLC.
Wow. Plus users for the streaming platforms and all the others that they're using.
Yeah. We're talking about the VLC product. Like,
just VLC is 500 million people. Like, that's very. That must make for a lot. Do you get a lot of tickets and requests?
Yes, and that's, as I said, one of the issues is support. It's very difficult to manage.
Yeah, platform is very good. It's very stable, but I understand how. So how many support requests do you get? I'm just curious.
Tons.
Has to be in the millions, just because it is that.
No, we don't get that. No, don't get that much, but still, it's quite large. Yes.
Well, I mean that's. And how many people are handling those requests? Wow. Well. Let me know where they are, and I'll buy them a coffee when we meet. So you probably need some.
Could you send beer instead?
Sorry?
Could you send beer instead of coffee?
Yeah, of course, yeah. If we ever meet in FOSDEM, there's beer everywhere, and people are drinking beer at 9 a.m., so it's not a problem. Yeah, cool. Well, Jean-Baptiste, thank you very much. I mean, having someone from a project of the size of VideoLAN on the show is an honor in itself. And it was a great chat about something that literally everybody uses. Like, my father is totally not a computer person, but he somehow managed to get VLC on his Windows computer to play some videos he had recorded with his camera. So it's everywhere. So thank you so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for having me, Luca.
Are you going to be speaking at any conferences soon?
Probably at Academy in July in Greece. The KDE conference, I will probably be speaking.
Oh, nice. Well, we have a conference coming up, which is called, ClueCon. This ClueCon Weekly. So the big ClueCon is in August in Chicago from the 14th to the 17th. And well, it's a very nice technology conference. We have all things of real-time media going on, and I'm sure a lot of people there will be demoing using some VOC part or other, because it's where video works this day. Well, again, Jean-Baptiste, thank you very much for joining us today. And well, I hope to meet you at some conference around the world, and people will sure looking forward to hear about your story. And thank you for all the information you gave us.
Thank you for your time.
For the rest of the people, I'll see you next week. Goodbye.